So today's video is probably the last video and the last topic you ever thought you would see from me on this channel. However, I think this is the right thing to do. And what I want to do is discuss the various reasons why 2023 may not be the year that we would see a new Nintendo console. Now, why is this conversation a big deal? Obviously, for those of you who follow the channel or have been following me or tune in occasionally or even follow me on Twitter, you all know, and I even mentioned it in my last video, and I've mentioned it in so many videos, that I've been believing for over 2 years that 2022 or 23 would be the year that we might see the successor hardware from Nintendo, the next gen leap in power, whether it's a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro or something that isn't even a Switch. I've been saying next gen for Nintendo is 2022 or 23. And with 22 almost over, naturally, I've been really feeling, and I still feel this, by the way, that next year in 2023, we're going to see the next generation Nintendo hardware, whatever form it takes and whatever name it takes. And so for 2 years, I've been talking about it. It comes up on tons of videos and in tons of conversations I've had. I've made plenty of videos dedicated to just this one topic when it actually made sense given whatever was going on at that time. Again, including my last video just a couple of days ago. But I've been thinking, and I feel like it's only fair, as somebody who's been saying this and talking about it for so long and believing it for so long, to the point that, again, I know a lot of people get sick of hearing me talk about it. I think it bothers some people for some reason. I don't think I've ever been mean about it, but I think some folks just so adamantly don't believe it that they hate the fact that I talk about it at all. Only from the point of speculation. That's all I've ever done is speculated and guessed as a fan. But it's obviously bothered some people. And so I thought it would be an interesting and fun experiment. And I also think it's fair to the conversation that I, probably one of, if not the very first person on the internet to be championing the idea of new Nintendo hardware in 2023 specifically, for me to actually discuss, basically play devil's advocate to myself, and discuss the reasons why maybe that's not going to happen. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something here before I get any deeper into this. What I am not doing is backing down on the prediction that I've stuck to for 2 years, okay? I need to commit to it. I still do believe it. I do think next year we're going to see or hear something, or in a really great world even play something from Nintendo that is a next-gen leap in power or a next-gen machine. Something new is probably going to come next year. I believed it for 2 years. I still believe it. I'm not changing my prediction. I'm not backing down. I'm not trying to create a way out for me so that I don't end up looking foolish if I'm wrong. I'm not doing that. I'm doubling down on it. However, I've always said I could be wrong. And again, because I've believed it for so long, I'm only trying to be fair to the conversation. And I think it's interesting and fun to play devil's advocate to myself, right? For a lot of you who have felt that I've been wrong this whole time, or you're sick of hearing it, I'm kind of trying to give you guys more of a voice on camera in a video for myself by saying, okay, some people think that this is wrong and we're not going to see a next-gen Nintendo console for maybe a long time. So why not discuss the objective truths that might prove my theory wrong? So again, I am not changing my mind. I still think it's happening next year, but we're going to have some fun, and I want to be open-minded and discuss why maybe my prediction could end up being proven wrong. So let's address the first reason and the most obvious reason why my prediction and guess could actually be wrong. Why would we not see new Nintendo hardware next year in 2023? Again, the first and most obvious one is the Switch is still selling, man. It's still insanely popular. It was selling insanely well and breaking records in 2020 when I first started predicting this. It did the same in 2021. It's done the same this year. And I'm sure it's going to continue to sell very, very well next year. And so Nintendo is definitely in the envious position of being able to maybe pick and choose when the most ideal time to move to their next console would be. With the Wii U, as much as I love it to death, we all know it wasn't doing very well. So Nintendo's hand, you could argue, was maybe forced a little bit. They had to do something new sooner than later because they weren't really being successful with their console market. The 3DS was doing very well and keeping them afloat in most respects, and there were some games selling monumentally well on the Wii U, but the hardware was not doing well. It wasn't helping their overall business. They had to rely on the 3DS, and so in order to become a mega profitable company again, they needed to move on from the Wii U, and so again, they kind of had to do something. With the Switch, even though I have obviously believed they will do something next year and carry strong sales momentum from the Switch into the new thing, they don't really have to do it. If they want, they can keep riding out the Switch's sales success for a while. Yes, we do know that the Switch's sales are starting to kind of ebb and flow a little bit. We know that there have been some recent moments and months where maybe the PlayStation 5 has outsold it in some territories. So the Switch's unstoppable dominance is definitely starting to show cracks in its foundation. It still usually tends to be the best-selling piece of hardware on the market, but sales are slowly beginning to slow down. Sometimes it's not the best-selling console in any given territory in any given month now. And Nintendo themselves are even lowering their forecasted projection of sales. These are signs that the sales are certainly starting to slow, but are they still very, very strong? Yes, absolutely. It is still very popular. People are buying it and loving it. And I think it's great because I love the Switch to death. And so, you know, you look at the strong sales of the console still in its 6th year and probably continuing into its 7th year next year. And that's a great reason why maybe Nintendo doesn't feel they have to introduce something new in 2023. Something else that can't be ignored, and that plenty of people have used as an argument to my personal predictions over the years, is the simple truth that Nintendo, really Kimishima, when he was running Nintendo for I think about 2 or so years, but Kimishima and Nintendo themselves a few years ago did state that they envisioned the Nintendo Switch, just Nintendo Switch, we don't know what that means, but they said the Nintendo Switch, they envisioned it having a 10-year life cycle or a 10-year plan for the Nintendo Switch. And if we were to take that in its most literal form, without looking too deeply and without trying to maybe mold that verbiage around a different idea that could still end up proving me right, if we take it at face value, we think 10-year plan for the Switch, well, the Switch came out in 2017, 10 years later is 2027. So what if there's more truth to that than I believe there is? And what if they mean exactly what it sounds, and they will not introduce a true next-gen successor or leap in power to the Switch until 2027. Do I think that's going to happen? Definitely not. I think it's crazy and borderline just impossible. I don't see a world where Nintendo could make the 2017 Switch hardware last until 2027. But to add credence to the devil's advocate argument, and the many of you out there who have pointed this out to me over the years, it is something that Nintendo had said and Kimishima had said. It came from the very top of Nintendo, 10-year Nintendo Switch. Do I think it meant exactly what it sounded? No. But did they say that? Yes. Is there a chance that they were being honest and I'm just incorrect in how I'm interpreting it? Yeah. I might be wrong. They might have been honest. Maybe 2023 is not the time for new hardware because Nintendo has planted the idea that maybe we're not going to see something new until 2027. You guys can tell me if that makes sense to you or not. People have said that they believed that in the past. You know how I feel. I think it's impossible to envision the 2017 Switch lasting until 2027. Tell me if you guys think that's possible or not. But again, playing devil's advocate, Nintendo and Kimishima did say it at one point, so maybe it's true. Of course, there have been part shortages and chipset shortages that we know has affected all of the tech industry, whether we're talking about smartphones and tablets, whether we're talking about video game hardwares and PCs, whether we're talking about the computer chips that goes into cars and vehicles nowadays. I mean, you can just keep going down the line. The part shortages, mostly due to the pandemic, that of course changed everything and just the whole world, has affected everyone, including Nintendo. There's no reason to think that part shortages haven't affected Nintendo as well in terms of manufacturing a new console. They clearly have done a really great job through the pandemic of making sure that Switches and Switch Lites, and then even Switch OLEDs, which was introduced during the pandemic, by the way, they've been able to make those to such a high volume that they've still been selling like crazy. And again, we've got like 114 million Switches sold lifetime or something insane. And so, however the part shortages affected the Switch, we don't really know. But when we consider the fact that part shortages technically are still kind of a problem, we know it's affected Sony and Microsoft and, again, PC components. And so if Nintendo is thinking, hey, we need to make a next-gen machine or a new version of the Switch or whatever, but the part shortages are a problem, that could be another thing that makes it hard to believe that they could make something new in 2023. Something else that also cannot be ignored for 2023, even though there is a spin to this that could also aid in the idea of a next-gen console coming next year, we can also spin it to say maybe they're not going to go next-gen next year. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And it's the fact that already we know of a couple massive, very exciting games that are coming out next year in 2023 that really, for all we know, are only meant to be Nintendo Switch titles, 2017 Switch hardware releases, right? The first and the biggest, without question, is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That's coming out in only 6 months, you guys. And with no confirmation of new hardware yet from Nintendo, we know that that game will release on the current Switch as it stands, the 2017 hardware. Again, there are conversations and theories and reasons to believe that if something new is introduced before then, that maybe it's going to get a dual release, similar to Twilight Princess, similar to Breath of the Wild, where it's going to get a Switch and a next-gen release around the same time. Yes, that may happen, but again, that's not yet confirmed, so we can't actually talk about it that way. Right now, all we know is that game, their biggest game, is a Switch release. So, do they need to introduce new hardware to make Tears of the Kingdom a big hit? Definitely not. It's already coming to the Switch, so maybe that's their only plan right now. We also have a new Fire Emblem game releasing only next month in January on the current 2017 Switch. So we've got a new Zelda and we've got a new Fire Emblem, two very big franchises. Zelda is a massive Titanic franchise coming to the 2017 Switch hardware. Also, the dark horse for me for 2023 is Pikmin 4. That game right now, we haven't seen much of it, we don't know much about it, but they're telling us it is a 2023 game, and right now, the only hardware we know they're making is the Switch. So that stands to reason that that game will also be a Switch game. So right there, you have three very big and popular Nintendo-owned first-party franchises that are set to hit the Nintendo Switch as we know it in 2023. And I'm sure there's more games we don't yet know about. For all we know, Metroid Prime 4 also releases next year. And so if we look at just those 4 titles, Tears of the Kingdom, Fire Emblem Engage, Pikmin 4, and we're kind of really faking it by saying Metroid Prime 4 is in that conversation because we don't know when that game's coming out. But let's just pretend, for the sake of argument, that's another game that's possibly on the slate for next year. 3 to 4 huge first-party titles already confirmed. This is before Nintendo Directs. This is before new surprises. That's a lot of potential huge releases to release on the current Switch. And if 2023's Nintendo Switch lineup is this strong, doesn't that also mean that they don't necessarily need to release new hardware to be extremely successful and move a lot of product in 2023? I mean, obviously, again, I still think they're going to show us new hardware next year, but they don't technically have to if they already have a great lineup of games we can already play next year on the current Switch. And the strong lineup we already know about kind of feeds into the next and kind of my last point, which is if Nintendo would even have a strong launch lineup of games ready for a new console to be introduced next year. That's a huge thing we know Nintendo needs to do. Any console needs to have a strong lineup. And part of the many reasons the Switch was so massively successful is because they made sure to have a ton of huge, great exclusive games available on the Switch when it launched in 2017. And mark my words, I guarantee you, when they release their next big console, they want to emulate the same pattern. They need a killer app at launch, and they probably want to make sure they've got, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 other games that will fill out the rest of that 12 months, that full year after that new hardware launches. They know they need that to happen. It worked wonders for the Switch. They want to do the same for the next-gen console. Now, the argument could be, and I've made this argument in the past, and it's what I still believe, the argument could be that a lot of these games I listed, Tears of the Kingdom, Metroid Prime 4, Pikmin 4, not Fire Emblem, but some of these other games, Could they be planning to make those cross-gen or next-gen releases also so that those become the strong launch lineup games for next hardware? Yes, I think that's what the plan is. But since we don't know it, and since I'm playing devil's advocate, if they make these big games I listed as only Switch titles next year, then all of those get removed from the plate of the next-gen launch lineup. And so suddenly they don't have necessarily a lot of big games ready for that next console. They should want to launch the next console with a new Zelda, a new Metroid, and a new Mario. They should want to do that because that's going to make it a huge hit. But we don't know if that's the plan yet. So if they don't have a launch lineup, then that means they just might not be ready for their next machine yet. And I think that's the big point I'm trying to drive home with this last point, is that Nintendo just might not be ready for their next big thing. Even though I believe they are, and even though at this point, at the end of 2022, it seems like most people are finally starting to agree and feel the same way I've felt for 2 years, that 2023 makes sense for us to finally see something new, that they have to be ready at this point to introduce a new piece of hardware. But what if they're not? What if Nintendo just isn't ready like I think they are? I believe secretly behind the scenes they're ready and they're close to revealing something new. And by close, I mean 2023. But you know what? I don't work for Nintendo. You probably don't work for Nintendo. We don't know everything going on behind the scenes at that company. We don't know their business plan and their business forecast for 2023 and 24 and beyond. We don't actually know. We're just fans and nerds on the internet guessing and speculating and having fun talking about our favorite company. That's what I've been doing for 2 years when I've made these predictions, and it's what I'm still doing now. And so I just think it's worth noting that as much as I believe in 2023, we're going to see the new thing, Nintendo just may not actually be ready. And so the most important thing I just want to leave you guys with at the end of this video is just a reminder that I'm not changing my mind. I'm not changing my prediction. I think next year, 2023, it's time, Nintendo. Switch is great. It's done phenomenally. We're going to hit the 7th year of this console's life. Once it's March 4th, 2023, we will be within the 7th year of its existence. It's a great console. Phenomenal library, unbelievable record-breaking sales, so profitable. Nintendo, you have been killing it, and I love you for it. Thank you for the great console and the great games so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing to play your great games, even on the Switch, if that's what's available to me. But isn't it also kind of time for the next big thing? I think so. A lot of people think so. I think a lot of you guys are finally starting to come around. I've seen it in my comments, and I've seen it in responses to my statements on Twitter about this, that even people who were pushing back 2 years ago are starting to come around. Plenty of my fellow YouTubers are also starting to come around and feel like, 2023 feels like the time for something new from Nintendo. The Switch is showing its age. It's about time. And so I'm just trying to remind you guys at the end, I still believe it. I'm not changing my mind. I'm not trying to create a backdoor out so that I don't have to tell the world that I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I'm just playing devil's advocate. And I've said it since the beginning. I've had my prediction, 2022 or 23. If I'm right, obviously it's going to be exciting and we get to talk about new hardware. If I end up being wrong, if we reach January 1st of 2024 and we have not seen hide nor hair of new Nintendo hardware in any shape or form that counts as next gen, I will be wrong, and I will, head held high, I will come on camera, I will talk to the internet and say, hey guys, I've been wrong for 2 or 3 years. What are you going to do? I will admit it. I will discuss how and why I was wrong at that time, and I'll have no problem doing it. Yes, I have my own sense of pride, but I'm not too proud that I can't get on camera and talk to you guys about how wrong I am. If I was brave enough to say in 2020 I think it's going to happen, I have to also be brave enough to face the world in the event that I end up being wrong. I will have no problem doing it, but I still do believe it. So this is what I think. It's going to happen next year, but I might be wrong, and I've played devil's advocate to myself, and it's actually very fun to do so, why maybe we don't see new hardware from Nintendo in 2023.